The escrow process is one of the main reasons why individuals don't purchase XRP. In fact, many individuals believe that XRP is not decentralized. Because of the Ripple escrow, they believe that it is centralized. Many people outside of the cryptocurrency world have asked me why they don't invest in XRP. They have Bitcoin. They don't own XRP, but they do own Ethereum. And I wonder why. Additionally, they nearly always bring up the fact that Ripple controls the network, which makes them doubt its worth or, as you may know, believe that Ripple is selling XRP. However, when considering the XRP escrow, this is arguably one of the most significant misconceptions. In a sense, this is Ripple's arsenal. Alright, I understand that we receive updates on Ripple's progress toward unlocking 1 billion tokens nearly every month and that the price of XRP will be impacted. Because they are going to sell it and this or that it will drop. However, if we truly investigate a few things, we may be able to determine the precise purpose of the escrow. Prior to delving into this, I would like to briefly discuss the amount of escrow XRP that is available. Out of the 99.98 billion XRP that are available, roughly 36.5 billion are entirely escrowed. Additionally, we could follow the escrow wallets. By the way, we were able to see the sums in escrow here. And you could see them all if you scrolled down. Even down here, there's a lot more. However, generally speaking, the Ripple wallets, which are almost always referred to as Ripple, are the largest ones to really pay attention to. Do I now consider this to be a serious issue? Do I believe that it is problematic for Ripple to have such a large supply in escrow? Is saying something like, oh, XRP is centralized, an argument? No. We came to realize that it's escrowed. All of this is locked, and although some people assume that because of how much Ripple is keeping, this indicates that it is centralized, you must realize that there are escrow-related procedures that, in theory, keep XRP decentralized. We have discussed XRP's complete decentralization on numerous occasions, including referencing David Schwartz's highlights. We have even discussed it with Brad Garlinghouse. The strange thing about this, though, is that we go to Anderson's post over here. At this point, we begin to see things more clearly and gain a better understanding of the true situation surrounding the escrow. Therefore, Ripple's substantial XRP holdings are a benefit rather than a drawback. It guarantees that Ripple has financial motivation to promote XRP adoption as much as feasible. Ripple would have no financial motivation to promote XRP adoption and no justification to give XRP precedence over any other chain aside from certain XRPL features if they own none or very little of it. The best indicator of a person or organization promoting adoption is having substantial currency holdings. For example, consider Michael Saylor with Bitcoin or the Ethereum mob from the days of the veiled initial coin offering. Do you honestly believe they would advocate for the adoption of cryptocurrencies like Ethereum and Bitcoin if they didn't own any of those? The solution is clear. In addition, a former Ripple employee who oversaw XRP markets and liquidity development is shown in the video below. Watch the video to learn why Ripple's large XRP holdings are extremely advantageous to both Ripple and the adoption of XRP in general. To put it another way, this is based on statements made by Ripple personnel rather than just a theory I came up with. Miguel's key argument is that, because of Ripple's substantial XRP holdings, they are able to lend XRP to expert market. Ripple can encourage usage by making up the difference in cost if a cross-border corridor isn't sufficiently liquid or competitive in terms of the cost of traveling via it and Ripple's payouts on demand liquidity. Their sizable balance sheet and XRP can be quite beneficial in this situation. With enough volume passing through the corridor over time, it should become sufficiently liquid that Ripple won't need to provide subsidies for usage. For those who are curious, he also explains it. Utility increases with liquidity. Theoretically, XRP will increase in value over time. Thus, the price of XRP is directly related to utility. Even though it might seem apparent, someone might need to hear this, but not XRP haters. But take a look at this. We have 1 billion now. I understand. I'm not aware of how much more decentralized holdings are with Bitcoin or Ethereum. Am I correct? I don't believe Fatal owns a significant amount of Ethereum. Joe Lubin does too. The early adopters of Bitcoin have a ton, don't they? According to a research I recently observed, over 90% of the holdings are in 10% of the Bitcoin wallets there. Something ridiculous like that. It's a bit more private and less public, isn't it? Given how much the firm owns, I believe ours is a little more public. In terms of economics, I would argue that it places us in a really intriguing position because, First, my goal is to build liquidity. Lending XRP to individuals so they can supply market liquidity is one way to achieve it. In a market where purchasing something requires cash, you wish to make a bid and an offer. Additionally, you must have the item to sell if you choose to sell it. The only ways to sell something are to either borrow it or possess it. Borrowing money in Bitcoin is quite difficult. Now, you have major players like Fidelity and BlackRock, which are among the biggest players in the Bitcoin ETF market. Could we just say that all of those statistics and characteristics make Bitcoin centralized? Additionally, I could include the fact that, miners favor the top miners. Roughly 3 or 4 of them possess the greatest hash rate power. These arguments are widespread, so I could also go through the wallet list and say, all right, well, the top 10 or the top, 100 hold this much supply. The debate between centralization and decentralization in the space is exaggerated to an absurd degree. When considering XRP, we consider that its longevity can be attributed to both its usability and Ripple aspect. Some analysts may counter that although the dollar is still a tangible commodity, it is still based on petroleum. When I approved the first Bitcoin futures in history in 2017 as the CFTC chairman, we were concerned about the possibility that commodities, not just tangible commodities but also digital commodities, could eventually serve as currency anchors. And because the moment may come when we return to a commodity, a stabilizer for our money, I wanted to make sure that the price of Bitcoin, the global price of Bitcoin, was determined in dollars and not in any other currency. However, this time, the commodity may be a digital one rather than a physical one. Christian Carlo is the source of this. When we consider the strategic reserve and even the strategic stockpile, those are two things that we consider and that we have verified from this administrator also involve XRP. If you think about that correctly, then we could theoretically use that XRP just as we use petroleum to set a specific price and adjust the global price of it. It might be used as a weapon. If there was a sizable quantity of XRP in the stockpile, we could theoretically turn it into a weapon. Although we are aware that they will not be purchasing any more of the digital assets in that stockpile, that might undoubtedly alter in the future. The notion of Ripple giving the US government XRP is also conceivable, but because that is the war chest around Ripple, we will have to wait and see. That being said, I hope you